Hiya, welcome to Box on a Box Rock and Celluloid, or Bop Rack for short. Okay, so today I'm going to be looking at the albums of one of the greatest bands, most legendary bands of all time, Ireland's very own Thin Lizzy, and of course, principally the great Phil Lynott. It seems quite timely as a film coming out soon, or it may have already been out by the time this video drops. A song for While I'm Away, looking at his life. So I'm looking forward to that. So I've got to confess, like the early Thin Lizzy albums, I only kind of tracked down recently. I had intended to check them out. It's just something I never got around to checking the Eric Bell era, so I picked up this. So they're from 1969. Phil Lynott used to play before that in Skid Row. He played a bass in that, I think. Or did he play guitar and he took up bass? I can't quite remember. Obviously Gary Moore was in Skid Row. Later on, there's a guy called Bruce Shields ran that band. Anyway, Phil Lynott breaks away, forms Thin Lizzy with Eric Bell on guitar and Brian Downey on drums, and Brian Downey will be the other constant right the way through. The name comes from the sort of mispronunciation of the Irish accent, might say, pronounce the word thin as tin, so they might have said Tin Lizzy, and I think it was Eric, I can't remember if it was Eric Bell's idea, but the band sort of thought, well, if we have a name like that, it'll create a bit of sort of misinformation with the name and it'll get it out there. Okay, so the first album, Thin Lizzy, yeah, this back to front as usual. Really strange album cover. When you first see it, you're like, what's that? It's actually the headlight of a car on the street with a mirror in it, and it's kind of caught in the street. I got this reissue. It's actually really nice packaging. It's got a kind of decker. Sorry, it's back to front, but it looks really lovely, that. There's nice notes in this. So I gave this a few listens, and yeah, I liked it. It's he's finding his way as a writer, Phil Lynott, but what's good about this is there's quite a lot of selection, but the songwriting is there. There's obviously a lot of Hendrix influence, Hendrix and Cream principally. You can hear, and Hendrix influence comes with his lyrical style, his singing style, but the lyrics on this are really, really interesting. I mean, he's in the tradition of sort of Irish wordsmiths to me. I don't read books, so I'm not going to claim I've got a big knowledge of James Joyce and people like that, but he creates characters and tales of what he sees, and this is why he's such a unique lyricist and a unique figure in the history of rock, really. And again, the Hendrix influence, Hendrix was very influenced by Bob Dylan with his lyrics, and you can hear that passing into Phil Lynott. And what develops in this is his ear for a rhyme, which obviously later on will get very sort of catchy and very skillful in a track like Boys Are Back in Town. In this, he's kind of experimenting more. But it's weird, it opens with a song called The Friendly Ranger at Clonarf Castle, and it's almost got a little spoken word bit at the start, and he references the Lonely Ranger as a bowl of beans. I can't remember what the exact rhyme is, but it's just it's really unusual for an album to open like that. And then there's a track, Honesty Is No Excuse. It's good, sort of going through a relationship and issues around that. Then the third track's a track called Diddy Levine. This is like 7 minutes, and this is a proper, kind of rambling tale about this character Diddy Levine, and other characters come into it and what happened to them, and it's quite fascinating, really. Then there's Raid Gun, Look What the Wind Blew In. That's a really good rocker. Now, this track, Look What the Wind Blew In, and the other track with Honesty Is No Excuse, this remaster has got extra tracks on the end that basically they went back, Phil Lynott, Gary Moore, it was as well, to basically do some overdubs on these recordings. And then some of you may remember there was a compilation out. There was Remembering Part 1 and Continuing Saga of the Aging Orphans. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't really understand what these were, what these Thin Lizzy albums, but basically Decca, once they'd had their success from 76 onwards, Decca decided to cash in and issued compilations in 2 parts. But the band actually went back, well, Phil Lynott and Gary Moore, maybe Scott Gorham did, to put on some extra guitars and that. And what's interesting with them, Look What the Wind Blew In, and the later track on here called Things Ain't Working Out Down at the Farm, is track 9. Things Ain't Working Out Down at the Farm is not actually on this album, but it's the redone versions on this. is you can hear like it's got low harmonies on. They've put kind of elements into it of Lizzy post 76, post 75. And it actually is really effective. You can hear like the song almost sounds like more like a Thin Lizzy track from the era. So, you know, the DNA of his songwriting, you know, you've got elements that you can supplant into that era from the Brian Robinson era and so on. It's got a track called Air, Return of the Farmer's Son, then more mellow. And then Clifton Grange Hotel, again, his mother ran a hotel in Manchester, so I'm guessing that was the Clifton Grange, the lovely Philomena. And this had various, you know, actors come through it and people when Phil was a young lad, and obviously inspired him. Saga of the Aging Orphan and Remembering Part 1. Yeah, so it's all a mixed bag, but it's got a little more focus than the next one. It's definitely worth checking out. I mean, what a mark out of 10, you know, I'll give it a 6 out of 10 or something. But when it was on YouTube, I was looking at it, a lot of the comments, it's some people's favourite Lizzy album. I think it's that thing, some debut albums can be really interesting by bands, but typically they don't sound like the band's going to sound like. An example of that would be Saxon's debut album and Judas Priest's debut albums. They're actually good records, they just don't sound like that, what the band's going to become, and this kind of has elements of that. I think the other thing is like Eric Bell, so I'm going to put that there, is more of a Hendrixy sort of player. He's more freeform, his soloing. When they get Gorham and Robinson in, everything becomes very tight and very on point, the guitar playing. You know, tight riffs, tight harmonies. But we'll sort of come to that. So the follow-up album, Shades of a Blue Orphanage, I always thought this was the debut album when I was a kid, because I didn't realise it was a Thin Lizzy album. You just never saw it in the shops. So really haunting cover on this, but it's a wonderful back picture of them walking through the park, Phil, Eric Bell and Brian Downey. I just love the atmosphere on that picture. I think it really captures, you know, this band, they're in Ireland. Obviously, you know, back then it takes longer for things to reach to Ireland, so when these artists like Rory Gallagher and Thin Lizzy come out of Ireland, it's an awesome thing, you know, Van Morrison. It's a little more unfocused, this. I didn't really get down with this. There's Buffalo Gals Strange. There's a second track. It's got a kind of repeating phrase: Buffalo, Buffalo, Buffalo. Kind of like Take a Chance on Me by ABBA, but it seems to you know, it seems to lack more focus. The first album seems more focused. It's got a version of Suicide on this actually, but it's kind of done more like a bluesy sort of ZZ Top type of thing, like a Boogie or who's the Groundhogs, you know, that type of thing. And obviously he would redo that on the Fighting album on Live and Dangerous. It's got a full-length version of Whiskey the Jar. These are bonus tracks. It's kind of, I've got to be honest, it's kind of hard for me to kind of comment on the tracks in this because I couldn't totally get the grips with this album. So a curio for me. The third album of the Eric Bell era is from 1973, that one's 72, and that's Vagabonds of the Western World. So this is interesting because this is the first one to feature the artwork of Jim Fitzpatrick, who will do some of their classic album covers. Again, this is, you know, it's much better than the previous one. I think I probably prefer the first one. It's a little more focused, but again, there's quite a lot of curios in it. But first track's interesting, Mama Nature Said. Again, the lyrics are really about the environment, and it's kind of Mother Nature, you know, what did you do to me? So again, you could say Phil being ahead of his time, but there's quite a lot of environmental issues back then with sort of hippie culture and Gaia theory. Obviously, the Osmonds do the Awesome Crazy Horses, which isn't about horses, it's about cars and traffic pollution. And that's a really good track, Mama Nature Said. And then you got The Hero and the Madman. This is an interesting track. Obviously, Phil must have read comics when he was a kid, so it's got spoken word bits with an American accent, but it's kind of as if it's from a comic strip. So it's kind of commenting on what the hero's doing in the comic strip. And I don't know, it's just interesting. I don't know if it works, but it's just quite fascinating. Slow blues, that was just okay, and then The Rocker. And this is probably like a key track. This was a track that still played live on the Live and Dangerous album. They never played Whiskey in the Jar. Obviously, that was a hit. It was kind of one of those accident hits. I think it made number 1. Or was it number 6? Back in 72, but the band didn't like it because it was a cover. And then it didn't do anything for them, really. It didn't sort of galvanise their album or anything. It just got them out there a bit more. So really, that track got rediscovered when Metallica covered it. Although I remember hearing it on the Adventures of Thin Lizzy compilation in 1981, which is the first Thin Lizzy kind of thing I bought, and I loved the track. But yeah, it's got another version of that on this disc. This isn't a posh remaster. This is from 91. I couldn't find the other one. And you got Vagabond of the Western World, the title track. That's cool. Track 6 is really good. Little Girl in Bloom, again, a brilliant lyric about teenage pregnancy or possible underage pregnancy. And obviously Phil referencing, that's very controversial at the time, but particularly in a country like Ireland. And it's really good. It's all about how the girl's going to tell her father, don't worry about it, But Phil kind of taking a really concerned sort of father figure presence in it. Gonna Creep Up on You, that's quite a funky track. And then A Song for While I'm Away, which is the title of the new documentary coming out, which is a cool sort of, while I'm away on tour, I'll be thinking about you, my girlfriend type of thing. So yeah, probably say Salma 6 out of 10 as well. I think it's got its fans. I should just say the riff on the rock is awesome as well by Eric Bell. I think what stands out on this is Phil Lynnett's doing great lyrics, some of his best lyrics. He's got his singing style together. He hasn't quite developed his backing vocal harmony style. Eric Bell plays more Hendrix, he's more freeform. He's not structured. Brian Downey is, putting in some cool fills in that, but he's kind of busier. Later on, he'll lay down kind of more sturdier grooves, but do those awesome fills that I think he does. And we'll come to Brian Downey's contribution. Now, the next album I don't have a copy of, I used to, it's Nightlife. It's not one, I think it's got its problems, but I'm just getting up the tracks on here. Apologies, I should have done this before. So this album, Brian Robertson joins. There's a weird picture of the band on the back if you see this album. And Brian Robertson looks like a kid, and he was 17. And obviously Scott Gorham's joined. So I think Scott Gorham might have already been in the band, and then they did have auditions in some theatre in London. Phil wanted 2 guitarists so he couldn't be let down again by a guitarist because Eric Bell had walked off stage in 73 drunk. The pressure was getting to him. So I think Scott Gorham went down the theatre, got the job, and then Brian Robinson turned up later, something like that. So their harmony guitars don't come together yet on this. I think it kind of suffers from things like it has like orchestrations on it, which date back to the previous albums. I should have mentioned some that have like string orchestrations and stuff. But they don't, there's not, the material's not as balanced. It opens with a track called She Knows, which is a really good sort of kind of poppy funky track. Then you've got the track Nightlife, which, I don't know, it's kind of a bit sort of jazzy, it's a bit smooth. I'm not into that. Then It's Only Money is a really funky rocker. Now that could fit on Fighting, it could fit on Bad Reputation. That's kind of like where they're going to go. Track 4 is one of the most famous tracks, It's Still in Love with You. I think Frankie Miller sings that. Interestingly enough, Frankie Miller was mates with the band, mates with Brian Robertson. Later on, Brian Robertson would break up a fight in the Speakeasy because someone was getting at Frankie Miller, get his hand cut, and they had to cancel the US tour, and that was one of the reasons why they never made it in the US. The other reason was the previous US tour, when they tried to get their Phil in it, they'd had to send him home because he had hepatitis. So really the drink and drugs thing undid him there. Robert was drinking, Phil probably got hepatitis, possibly because of his drug use. But anyway, digressing, Still in Love with You. It's good, but it's nowhere near as good as the Live and Dangerous version with Phil singing. I think that's the thing. Once you've heard the Live and Dangerous version, let's got a track with Frankie Carroll, which is all right. Again, it's kind of Phil doing one of his character things, but it's not as good as his earlier stuff of that. It doesn't kind of fit with this. Showdown, that's a cool track. Banshee's all right. Philomena, this is a lovely track about Phil's mum. Really like it. And then Sha-La-La-La-La, this is just a funky track with daft lyrics, but again, the live version's better because it had Brian Downey's fantastic drum solo. So that's one thing that's starting to come out, is Brian Downey's kind of tightening up his beats, but he's got a great groove. I was thinking about it the other day, and I think of all the rock drummers, whatever you think of Brian Downey technically, I think he's technically really good, but drummers would know more than me. I think he had a great feel. Like Phil Rudd of AC/DC and Bill Ward of Black Sabbath, drummers with just the perfect pocket for the band they were in. And the finished is with Dear Heart, which is, it's an alright track. I'd give it a 6 out of 10, this album, but it's not an essential album. This is the first proper Thin Lizzy album, and even down to having the logo on, it's Fighting. They always slag the album cover, but I love the album cover to this. They look really hard and they've got top platform shoes. This was one of the first Thin Lizzy albums I bought. I bought it in Hedgehog Records in Lancaster. Near where I live, there's a market in Lancaster, an indoor market, and I found a copy of Fighting in there. And it's weird, it had kind of plastic, sticky back plastic over it, very shiny sleeve. What's interesting about this album is it's almost, mainly deep cuts. It's got Rosalie on it and Suicide. Obviously, Rosalie's a live classic. Suicide's on Live and Dangerous, but I'd argue it's not one of the prime tracks. And it's got the track Wild One, which it was a single at the time, but its reputations kind of grew more in the 90s. I think John Norum covered it, and it's become a bit of a Lizzy sort of staple. It's got a great lyric, and that's probably the first track with the fantastic harmony lines of Gorham and Robinson really coming to the fore. But what I love about this album, it's produced by Phil Lynott, and some people criticise the production, but it's really raw. It's quite heavy and dirty. But the deep cut tracks are just really good. You got For Those Who Love to Live, which is got a great harmony line, is kind of funky sort of acoustic track. Fighting My Way Back, which is really quite a jolly, uplifting song that filled as well. King's Revenge, really good track. And then a great track called Spirit Slips Away. It's got a fantastic guitar line that opens this, but a really mellow, sort of haunting lyric by Phil. Then Silver Dollar, which I like. It's a really catchy, I got a silver dollar. It's just very, very catchy. Freedom Song, which is a good sort of kind of lyric, kind of guy. He's a freedom fighter, a rebel. Maybe he's been caught and he's going to get lynched or something or hung. Back in the old days of Ireland. But he's shouting out his song. And then Ballad of a Hard Man, which is a really hard rocker on the end. There's not a bad track on this album. It's definitely an 8 out of 10. And it's the first proper Gorham Robertson album, but I think it's a really, really good record. I think it's one of their best. Okay, so 76 is a key year for Lizzy. I should say that album made number 60 in the charts. This one makes number 10, and it will send them over the top. This is the only album that will go gold. It goes gold in America as well. A country where they have a following and huge respect from people who know them, but they never really broke it. If they could have got out and toured this album and followed it up, I'm sure they would have had platinum albums, but it just wasn't to be, because Phil's writing style fit perfectly. But of course it's Jailbreak, fantastic Jim Fitzpatrick cover, and those of you who remember the vinyl, this kind of inner sleeve sort of pulled out. This is a top double disc reissue. It's got great pictures. This was on the back sleeve, sort of tinted shots. The band looking fantastic, and this is where my earliest memories of Lizzy with the boys are back in town on Top of the Pops, and sort of looking at Scott Gorham with his long hair. And I did a video recently and kind of mentioned, that's what a guitarist looks like, and that's what they do in a band. And it's got this great little story as well about the Warriors breaking out and stuff. The Warrior locked himself into the video scanner and gazed through the universe until he came upon Dimension 5. Great, it's a little sci-fi story. So what's this album like? Obviously, it gets the sort of rep of being their best album. It is a really good album, principally because it's got these 4 stonking tracks which are on Live and Dangerous: Cowboy Song, Boys Are Back in Town, Jailbreak, and Emerald. Obviously, Emerald. These are some of the, not only their most famous tracks, they're just some of the most famous rock tracks ever, really, particularly in this country and Europe. And then you've got Warrior, which is a brilliant track, and that's another Live and Dangerous cut. So what are the other tracks like? Second track, Angel from the Coast, really good. So that's kind of picking up on the kind of funkiness of It's Only Money and She Knows off of the Nightlife album, but coming together in a better way. It's about an assassin. I don't know if he's from West Coast or East Coast, but he's going to do a hit. I really like it. It's got a really cool guitar. And so that works well as a deep cut. Track 3, Running Back, I'm not as keen on that. It's got a crap sax bit on it, and it's a bit lame. Romeo and the Lowly Girl, quite like that. It's quite a nice tune. And then Fight or Fall's the other one, track 7, which is quite nice. So I'm sort of, it's got 6 corking cuts and 2 alright cuts. I would give it an 8 out of 10. I think the only sort of thing I've got with it, sorry, just doing that, is that you hear those tracks so much, Boys Are Back in Town, Emerald and stuff. It's almost like you don't reach to put it on as much because you're hearing those tracks all the time. I'm just trying to suss out, was this the one that was produced by Tony Visconti? It's not. I think Visconti comes in next. Yeah, so next album, so some people might call this controversially, but I know Joe Elliott of Def Leppard, this is his favourite Thin Lizzy album, it's my favourite, Johnny the Fox. Beautiful cover by Jim Fitzpatrick, his lovely Celtic imagery, sorry. And again, you had these top pictures on the back with these sort of Celtic rings around with Phil and Scott. And then there's Brian and Brian in there. There's Brian Robertson looking cool with his big hoop earring, and Brian Downey. I should just say, actually, on the Jailbreak version I've got there's some remixed versions of some tracks, Jailbreak, and so on. And there's some tracks on this, Johnny the Fox, as well, where Scott Gorham had an extra guitar. He went to Joe Elliott's studio. They repitched some out-of-tune brass. A few other things, re-EQ'd the guitar snare, and it sounds really good. There's always a criticism of Lizzy that their recordings didn't capture the live sort of sound of the band. But these remix versions, there's a real debate that it's worth doing that to these albums because it really does give some, punch to the tracks. So this is a great album, and again, I think it's almost, if you take Don't Believe a Word off it, it's almost all deep cuts, and that's why it's not as popular as Jailbreak. I mean, they played Johnny the Fox live. They did that one a lot. But it's it kind of stands on deeper cuts, and I think they're great deep cuts. Opens with Johnny, which is a great rocker, brilliant opening riff. Then Rocky, which is one of the most hilarious lyrics, which I love. He knows all the tricks to pull the chicks, playing his guitar licks, I wish. Borderline, lovely song, really lovely lyric by Phil. And then it finished side one with Fool's Gold, which has got a great little spoken word bit about prospectors. I think that's brilliant. Then you got Johnny the Fox meets Jimmy the Weed, side 2, which is on Live and Dangerous, I think. Old Flame, which is a great track. And then one of my all-time favourite Lizzy tracks, Massacre, top. You can hear the influence on a band like Iron Maiden on this lyrically, and it's a heavy, one of the heaviest tracks I've done, with a fantastic verse. Then the beautiful Sweet Marie, and then it finishes with a fun track, Boogie Woogie Dance. This benefits from Tony Visconti producing. He comes in on this album, and he does, he gets not only a better sound. Oh no, it's produced by John Alcock. There we go. Good job I checked that. Okay, so John Alcock, now remember, sorry, fact check. John Alcock produced Jailbreak as well. Yeah, so Tony Visconti's not coming to the picture yet. So these records do sound good, but I think Visconti will do better, which he did. This is Better Produced Album, which is the next one. Bad Reputation. This is still wrapped, actually. I had another copy of it, and I got this one recently because it's got extra tracks. So it's a slightly kind of heavier, harder hitting sound, this, because of the aforementioned Tony Visconti. Obviously, it's David Bowie's producer. Why is there only 3 of them on the front? Well, it's the old Brian Robertson. He has the fight in the speakeasy protecting Frankie Miller. Cuts his hand, and Phil gives him his marching orders. He does come back into the band for this and does record some 3 solos and some harmony guitar. And he is featured on the back sleeve. But it's always been strange. So in actual fact, Scott Gorham performs most of the guitar on this album, and I think it shows what a really good guitar player Scott Gorham is. I think there's a perception Brian Robertson's the kind of better player, and I think he is. I think he's got more individual style because of his wah-wah, but it's a close run thing. It's the distance between Gorham and Robertson is not as far as I would say it is between Downing and Tipton or Smith and Murray. I should say that I love, KK Downing, I think Glenn Tipton's better, but I love KK, big fan. Same with Smith and Murray. Dave Murray's great, he's got a thing, but I think Aidan Smith's quite a bit better. with his great vibrato. Gorham Robertson, you know, if you said Gorham Robertson was a 10, like Scott Gorham's a 9, you know, there's not much between them. They both have a strong but smooth vibrato, which complement each other, and they both play sort of nifty pentatonic licks. They work really well. This album's got great deep cut, Soldier of Fortune, Opium Trail, Killer Without a Cause. I think John Noram's covered Opium Trail, maybe Killer Without a Cause. Then Bad Reputation, Dancing in the Moonlight and Southbound are the well-known tracks that are also on Blind and Dangerous. I think it tails off track 7, Downtown Sundown, 8, That Woman's Gonna Break Your Heart, and 9, Dear Lord. They're not strong cuts for me. 7 out of 10. I've never liked this as much as the previous two, but it's a really good record. It's on a roll. Tony Visconti's kept in the producer's chair for this, and there is overdubs on this. What can we say about this? Is one of the all-time great live albums. There's an argument with Thin Lizzy. Phil writes such good kind of singles that if you buy this album and a really good Thin Lizzy greatest hits compilation, there's one released about 10 years ago with a black sleeve and chrome logo, and it's a double disc. And if you had that, you'd have like quite a lot of really good Thin Lizzy stuff. There's also like a triple disc just been released, which is kind of budget price. Loads of good stuff on that. You know, and that's something I think, like, although their albums, they're great, you know, sometimes they're not as cohesive, because I think Philip Lynott kind of wrote, you know, kind of individual songs that kind of stood out rather than whole albums, you know. Yeah, so this is a classic. The main thing on this has got the track Are You Ready, which they never did a studio version of. It's like a great live favourite, but you know, one of the all-time great live albums. Yeah, it's got bits done and redone in the studio, but most of these albums do. I think there's only Stranger Than the Night by UFO that's not overdone much. Okay, and then the next album is Brian Robertson leaves, and Gary Moore comes back. Gary Moore had been in them in '74, but he didn't make a record until this, Black Rose. Now this is, for some people, this is their best studio album. Again, Tony Visconti's in the producer's chair. He gets really good performances. Gary Moore fits in great. My only criticism of Gary Moore with Scott Gorham is his vibrato. Gary Moore's got amazing vibrato, of course, but it doesn't blend as well with Scott Gorham. Scott Gorham's a little less intense. So Brian Robinson's vibrato, when they oscillated, it sounded really smooth on the harmonies. With with Gary Moore, it's a little more. So sometimes it's not, the chemistry's not quite there as much. And obviously, Gary Moore would go after this album. He didn't stick around. It's kind of weird painting him on the back. You can see there, Brian Downey's got short hair. So they're starting to be influenced by the punk new wave. There's a couple of tracks on this, I think, Get Out of Here. Certainly, like, that's got quite a punky edge to it. What's the other one? S&M, toughest street in town, the kind of lyric as well. It's got some of that punk rock attitude. Yeah, it's got 4 big hits on this. Well, 3 hits. Do Anything You Want to Do, Sarah, People Knock Out, I Love the Song, Even the Labrador in the video. I'm Waiting for an Alibi, probably like one of the all-time classics. Probably the greatest Lizzy guitar solo, or one of them. Superb solo on that. Trading Off, and then Gary and Scott coming for a fabulous harmony. One of the most poignant tracks is Got to Give It Up, about Phil's addiction, and there's a bit later on in the song where he goes, he says, Mama, I'm coming home, but he does it with total pathos, and it's almost, he's aware of the situation he's got himself into. You know, by this point he's getting down the rabbit hole, and he won't come out of it in time. For many, the last track, Black Rose, I can't pronounce the Celtic pronunciation here, apologies, but Gary Moore did a lot of the arrangements on this, and it's a bit of a masterpiece. He does those fantastic lines, and he arranged it all. So as an album, again, for me, it's got those 4 tracks everyone knows, and I think Got to Give It Up's a superb deep cut. The other tracks don't quite work as much for me. I'm not as into S&M and like With Love. They're kind of a little more throwaway for me, but you know, it is a good record. I'd probably give it 7 out of 10. So next album's Chinatown, and things are starting to, great album cover, they're starting to kind of slide here. Snowy White comes in and guitar. He's a great player and he does some good solos. I think the problem Snowy White wasn't a rocker, a metaler, hard rocker, whatever you want to call it, and he didn't kind of fit in. He didn't have the rock image that Lizzy required. And playing wise, he's definitely there. I must confess, I'm not sure on this when it's Gorham or White. There is some fantastic tracks on this. Obviously, Chinatown and Killer on the Loose, both singles and two very well-known tracks. Killer on the Loose famously didn't get on Top of the Pops because it was the time of the Yorkshire Ripper killings, so it never made Top of the Pops. But this album did well. I think it was a top 10 album in 1980 on the back of the new album. Obviously, Lizzy got a lot of traction. She just said Black Rose made number 4, was it number 2? Live and Dangerous was number 2, number 4. Maybe switch those round. I think Bad Reputation had made number 11. So Lizzy, all his albums went gold or silver in the UK. Now popular in Sweden and Australia. So we'll come to that, how that affected things. But it opens with We Will Be Strong, which is a great track. Then you got Chinatown, Sweetheart, Sugar Blues. I'm not really into those. I mean, Sugar Blues, obviously it's about cocaine, but not into that. Killer on Loose, Having a Good Time. It's alright, it's a bit of throwaway. Snowy White gets a co-write on that, interesting enough. Genocide, The Killing of the Buffalo, that's a really good track. Then there's Didn't I and Hey You. It's got 4 cracking tracks, 5 out of 10. I haven't got a copy of the next album. I used to have it. It's Renegade. Now that's got, the title track's really good, Renegade. And then you've got, I'm just flicking through here, just getting to it. And you've got Angel of Death, which is a really cool track. But it bringing keyboards on this album with Darren Wharton. But Angel of Death's got a really cool keyboard intro. Then you got Renegade. The Pressure Will Blow, that's a pretty good track actually. So it opens good. Leave This Town, not fussed with that. Hollywood Down on Your Luck, that's a really catchy track. Great backing vocals. And then you've got No One Told Him Facts, Mexican Blood, It's Getting Dangerous. I'm not really fussed about those tracks. Some people really like this album. I think Martin Popoff, the writer, really raves about this, and a lot of people rate this over Chinatown. I'd probably say it's sort of on a par. I think I remember we rented it on cassette from Kendall Library back in 1981 or 1982. So I listened to it at the time, and later on I got it. I like the tracks that I know really well, Angel of Death, Renegade and Hollywood, but I wasn't as fussed with the other ones. Okay, that brings us to Thunder